For us as sociologists, we find relationships in Korea here to be really fascinating. And in particular, this idea of what is often referred to as a collectivist culture or a communitarian culture. And in cultures that are individualist oriented, the people tend to see the world through the question of, what is best and what is right and what is good for me as an individual? And people from a more collectivist or communitarian-oriented culture, what is right, what is best, what is good for other people? That is the essential difference. Everything that we do is in this balance between other people and ourselves. So for the panel, actually, one question is, when you think about a collectivist culture, what comes to mind for you as Koreans?
전 가끔 이제 좀 우리나라에서 태어난 게 좀 자랑스러운 순간을 꼽으라면은 좀 어려울 때 우리나라 분들 좀 잘 뭉치지 않습니까? 얼마 전에 뭐 산불도 그렇고 밥차라든지 생필품을 다들 십시일반해서 그분들 좀 돕는 이런 문화들이 저는 좀 가장 먼저 생각이 나네요.
저도 좀 비슷한 맥락에서 좀
네네.
활발하게 많은 분들이 모여서 자원봉사를 다니는 그런 문화를 봤을 때 남을 돕는 것을 되게 기꺼이 생각하고 실천하는 모습에서 좀 되게 멋있다는 느낌을 많이 받았습니다.
성범 씨는?
그리고 또 한국인들 하면 제일 큰 특징이 정이 있다는 거잖아요.
중요하죠.
이게 정확히 영어로 번역하기 되게 어려운 단어라고 우리만 갖고 있는 거라고 하던데 그래서 저는 사회책으로 배우긴 했지만 뭐 IMF 때 금모으기 운동이라던가
And the examples you just gave are three of the examples that I often see in textbooks about this. Yeah. So Korea is really held in this way and understood in this way. What do you see? What does this mean?
It's really just about, it's the Venn diagram. So I would say an individualist or collective society we can see here, just like we can see two individuals and their relationship.
But what happens here in a place like Korea is this part in the center gets a little stronger. And whereas in our country, this part still gets a little weaker, and then actually the rings push apart. And so, what is an example of this? So you say, I saw this the first time when on a Sunday we went to Mart, and it was closed. And I said, how's it closed? This was a couple years ago. I said, this is crazy. And I said, when your large stores, your large entities will close down a couple days every month, wow, yeah, this really is important, which is the Distribution Industry Development Act.
맞아. Yes.
So that the small stores, the small establishments don't get put out of business.
That's amazing.
The store Costco or Walmart or these big stores, if you told average Americans that twice a month, all of those stores were going to close on a Sunday, Americans would have a revolution.
No.
And even
You think they would have a revolution?
I think it would be close.
상상할 수 없는 행동이구나.
You will sacrifice your own individual needs for the greater good of society. We do it as well in the United States. We do these kinds of things, but you do it much more often. I'll give you another example. So homelessness, where you have a homeless problem in Seoul, such as the person in this photo by Seoul Station. This is terrible. It's sad. It's unfortunate.
In Washington, D.C. last summer, I was there for a couple days. Yeah, every park, every corner, because people were outside of the small stores, like waiting to ask people for food when they came out. And it was, you couldn't go anywhere without seeing homeless people and literally stepping over people in certain places.
So, but let's put this together in a different kind of way. If Seoul had the same homeless problem that Los Angeles has, different size population, so if you change the population, you have the same problem, you would have 120,000 homeless people in Seoul. That right outside this building, there would be homeless people sleeping in the corners. In an individualist-oriented society, you see, they're responsible for their homelessness. But in a communitarian or collectivist society, it's all of our problem. Here's another one, like gun homicides. What? We have 50 gun homicides every 24 hours in the United States. And what we are saying is, this is not our problem. And you think that. This is individual problems. You go solve it. As a society, we are not going to solve this problem.
충격이다, 충격.
But yeah, this is what we are left with, is we can't make decisions together that would serve the entire population because we can't agree.
And you don't accept this. This is just, it's not going to happen here. Why? Because you are a community of people who connect to one another, you live together, and you feel a sense of responsibility toward one another. Here's, this is examples, right? This is here in Korea. There's a spill on the roadway and people are coming to pick it up. Now this happens in the United States, of a truck that turns over and people jumping out of their cars and taking everything and running away with it. Now, you're also going to have examples of this, but you have many more examples of the other thing. How often has it happened that there's a truck spill and Koreans all come and they steal everything and they run away with it? Here's the thing. This collectivism doesn't come from nowhere. It has to come from the fact that people need other people. We see this in rice farming economies, especially where there's irrigation that is collective irrigation. In rice farming, when you irrigate, you need your neighbors in order to successfully irrigate all of the crops in a particular field. And the idea is that in Ecuador, where I did my research, it was on how do we get people in rural Ecuador to cooperate with one another. But in Ecuador, there was never a rice farming economy like this. And so therefore, people never needed one another in order to get along, in order to build these relationships that were dependent, absolutely necessary, because people didn't need one another historically. And then, so therefore you were able to do this, make kimchi in the way that you do. It's all of these things that bring people together. If you don't make kimchi with your neighbors and your kimchi crop doesn't survive, you won't survive. And so it's best for everybody to collectively come together and work together. In a communitarian culture that works very well is an excellent culture and an excellent way to be. So therefore, we see that this communitarianism here, it comes from somewhere.
Nunchi.
It's like Nunchi is a thing that is, I remember when Kim Mi-young, MK, came to my class many years ago, and I just asked her this question, hey, explain Nunchi to my class. And she explained it, but it's very complicated. But Nunchi is something that we've discovered and we really like. And maybe one of the biggest reasons we keep coming back to Korea is because we're trying to understand Nunchi.
It's so true.
We were at a meal with
Just a high-level person.
a high-level person in Korea. We were actually three high-level people. One was a friend of ours, and we were invited to this meal. And Lori and I were sitting together on this side, someone here, and then someone here. And I felt like Lori was not practicing high.
I'm not Korean.
She was not working with Nunchi, okay? Lori was being Lori.
I was working with what is my social intelligence in US, right? Which is like trying to understand how to break the ice with people, how to get them to speak more about themselves personally.
You were talking pretty loudly and fast, which is what you do. You're from New Jersey.
맞아요. 우리나라 사람이 아니니까.
This is bad Nunchi. And so tried to like kind of kick her under the table, like, but she didn't understand. So I was like, okay, so then I practiced bad Nunchi because I took our friend here later the next day and I said, hey.
And all three of us were together.
We were together. I said, hey, can you just be honest with us? At that meal yesterday, I have the idea that Lori was exhibiting very kind of low levels of Nunchi. She's our friend. What's she gonna say? But I put her in a very bad position because, yeah, Lori was not using good Nunchi. Then she has to lie and say, no, it was fine.
But she's saying something that will be hurting, disrespectful maybe?
They would hurt her and hurt the relationship. And so then I'm practicing bad Nunchi, right? But yesterday we were in a van and in the United States, so I'm more of an elder, right? I'm old, okay? So people who are under me, who have less power, I want them to feel equal to me, because that's what we do in the United States. So in the van, I climbed to the very back seats of the van. I said, no, I will sit back here. The younger people were saying, no, you can't sit back there. You have to sit up here. And I want to show them, no, you're equal to me. I value you. Really, I will sit in this seat. But then I realized they're uncomfortable because I'm back there. So my Nunchi kicked in and I said, no. Go sit in the front seat. And so then the next time we got in the van, I sat in the front seat.
And it's still hard to know.
Yeah, we never know.
It's hard to ask those questions.
But it's part of the magic of Korea. Like in the US, like you have one word, Nunchi. We don't have a word. So, it's so complicated.
4명의 사람이 있는데요. 5개의 초콜릿이 있습니다. 마지막 남은 하나는 주인이 누구죠? 마지막 남은 하나는
벌써 불편해.
다 배고파. 똑같아. 기본값은 똑같아. 다 배고프고 나이도 똑같고 성별도 똑같습니다.
In Korea, the person who picks up the chocolate, picks it up and says, hey, is anybody going to have this? Would never be the person who then eats it. And if everyone said no, the Korean would never say, okay, well, in that case, I will eat it. Because that would be just bad.
Right.
But in the US, we would do that. Say like, oh, no one wants it. Okay, I will have it.
This is a good subject for a lecture in
I
Social
could do that.
19.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Okay.
I think many people in the world, books are written about it. It's a very intriguing facet and feature of social life here. All right, one of the things that I think is important is that the part of Nunchi, at least from an outsider's perspective, that is the reading the room aspect of things, is what all people do in social life. I mean, this social intelligence aspect is what all people are doing. But we're reading differently, right?
And in a collectivist culture, you really need lots of social intelligence. Because if you are so concerned with people around you in a more collectivist-oriented culture, you have to be really clear about who's in charge. Because you see, you're all in this together. And so it's more difficult to understand who's in charge. In an individualist-oriented culture, it's like it's going to be much more clear, like who's in charge, what are they going to do, what are their roles, how much power do they have?
I think one thing that we do agree about is the indirectness of the way the Nunchi operates compared to the directness that is really required of us in the United States.
In an individualist, but it doesn't have to be fine-tuned in the way that it does here. And I said, well, this is a nation of Nunchi. Here, you have to be practicing Nunchi without practicing Nunchi. You have to be doing it without even thinking about it. You know, the United States is on top. First off, understand, Korea has become a global superpower. And many people around the world see Korea this way. And, you know, they are seeing Korea in ways that very often Koreans don't necessarily see themselves. But what's important is the United States, we became rich, we became really wealthy because we went out around the world.